Have you ever wondered what sets apart companies at scale right from startup from those who don't? Well, the Genius at Scale podcast is here to answer that question. I interview CEOs from scaling companies and explore the counterintuitive practices that help them grow in ways that other companies don't. We'll also explore the biggest mistakes that almost wrecked them. Hi, I'm John Hitler. I'm a 9-time company founder and CEO. Now I coach CEOs in scaling companies. We'll be joined by these visionary leaders who've defied convention, challenged the status quo, and redefined the very essence of scaling. This is Genius at Scale. Hello and welcome back to Genius at Scale. Today our guest is Matthew Scullion. Matthew founded and is the CEO of Matillion. Matthew, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Oh, well, John, thank you so much for having me on the show today. It's lovely to be here. You nailed the key points right. My name is Matthew Scullion, co-founder and CEO of Matillion. We're a software company. We manufacture a platform called the Data Productivity Cloud. I'm from Manchester, UK, where Matillion is co-headquartered along with our other HQ in Denver, Colorado. And I'm currently speaking to you from Orange County, California, where I happen to find myself today.
Wow. So you travel a whole bunch with your role.
I have very good airline status, John. So, Matillion's trying to solve a problem that almost all companies of any size around the world have. So the vast majority of our revenue comes from outside of the UK. It's something I'm really proud of, actually, that we've, the UK where I come from, perhaps its history is around the Industrial Revolution and stuff, and it used to make a lot of things. And it's often kind of talked about in the press nowadays that, we don't make stuff anymore because there isn't as many of those kind of smoke belching factories. But we do make stuff. It's just made of bits and bytes, and we sell it all over the world. And consequently, that drags me all over the world, especially to the US, where we have our co-HQ and which is our principal market.
Yeah. So what exactly does Matillion do? Or if I'm a customer, how do I benefit? Or what do you provide? How do I benefit? What is Matillion?
Great question, John. Thank you for asking it, sir. So we make a platform called the Data Productivity Cloud. But I guess the better way to answer the question would be, what's the problem that we solve? And, in my experience, at least, the global count of executives in companies that answer yes to the question, do you have all the data that you need to do your job? The global count of those people is kind of zero, right? No one has
one hand, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, globally.
Yes.
And the reason for that isn't because companies don't have the data. The world and organizations are awash with data. But to make it useful for you, you need to build out a use case that makes it do something, an analytics or AI use case. And 70% of the work involved with doing that is what we call data engineering. It's getting the data from wherever it lives to somewhere central. It's organizing that data, cleaning it up, making sure the right people see the right things, embellishing it with metrics, and doing all of that at billion or trillion row scale reliably and securely in an organization. That's 70% of the work, data engineering. The world doesn't have enough data engineers, and that's why no one has all the data that they need. So really, the only way of solving that problem is to either wildly improve the productivity of the data engineers that you do have, or to change the skills profile associated with doing data engineering so you can get more players on the pitch, so more people can do it. And those are the two things that Matillion's platform does. We wildly improve the productivity of data engineering teams, and by essentially making it easier, we slightly change the skill set required for the people doing data engineering. So not just full-on data engineers can do the work, and we have thousands of those people using our platform, but also tech-savvy business analysts, RevOps people, marketers, data scientists. They can all do data engineering in a democratized way themselves. And it works as well, by the way, which is useful. So we worked with the analyst company Forrester last year to do a deep dive study on some of our enterprise customers. And yeah, people using our platform, they can build data pipelines about 60% faster, about 60% more productively using our platform, which is a lot, right? But more importantly, or at least as importantly, they also then spend 70% less time maintaining those data pipelines. And that's important because normally data engineering teams in like the first 3 or 6 months are innovating, and then sort of 6 to 12 months are half innovating, half maintaining. And then by the second year, they're almost all maintaining, and we cut out 70% of that maintenance. So overall, it works out about 3-to-1 performance improvement. And that means that we can, materially impact that problem that no one has all the data that they need. That's what we do. And just finally, I'll say, given this opportunity to talk about my favorite topic, my company, that all of what I said is true for data analytics, but is also in a logarithmically accelerating way true for AI. And we're at the beginning of this world-changing megatrend around generative AI that will affect dramatically every aspect of how we work, live, and play. And companies that can bend AI to their will, tame it, and put it to use will succeed. But those that can't will be at material risk of not succeeding. And the challenge is the same, right? In fact, it's more pronounced. We have even fewer skills, and we have a higher compulsion to go faster. So over the last year, our platform, the Data Productivity Cloud, everything that we've been doing for the last decade for data, we've been starting to do for generative AI. Again, you can build RAG pipelines that are enterprise ready in a wildly more productive manner, and you can do it with a more commonly available skill set. So I bet you wish you'd never asked me the question now, John.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. So I'm a data engineer at a company where I'm hired, and like you say, it takes me 3 months to just find my desk and the restroom. Then I build stuff, and then year 2, all I'm doing is maintenance. If your product comes in then, and I've used it, and then I switch companies and they don't have it, do I not go to that new company because you say, unless you have this, I don't want to work here anymore because it's too much of a pain in the butt?
I mean, that could happen. What I would hope would happen, and what does regularly happen actually, is the person that had been using our software in company 1 and then moves to company 2 perhaps goes, oh, goodness, I'm taking a retrograde step here. I'm having to do all this stuff manually and in code and using open source projects and with a proliferation of point solutions. And I could go so much faster at my old gig where we use this what we think is an amazing platform called Data Productivity Cloud. Maybe we should try that out. And over the last few years, we've tried to make it a lot easier for customers to, just dip their toe in the water, try it out, make sure it's going to work for them. And so they can just come along to Matillion.com, fill out a form. And the design goal we worked to when we were doing this a couple of years ago was something we called 10 minutes to wow, John. And the idea is that you can go from Matillion.com to having built a working data pipeline in your environment. Maybe you use Snowflake, maybe you use Databricks, Delta Lake, Amazon Redshift, Google BigQuery as your Synapse, regardless of the cloud data platform that you use or the large language model that you like, you should be able to plumb that in and get it working and build a working data pipeline in under 10 minutes. So yeah, that vector you talk about is important. And I think it's why customer obsession is important in businesses as well. We need to leave a really good taste in the mouth with that user at company A, because when she or he then moves to company B, they might decide to bring Matillion with them. And we've certainly seen that happen many times.
Yeah, no, it almost sounds like the quality of the work they can do is obviously significantly increased, but the fun they can have as opposed to doing medieval data engineering. Yeah.
It's an interesting point, that actually, because, typically at the start of technology megatrends, the way that work is done is in quite an engineering-centric, almost quite enthusiast-centric way. If you think back to PCs, which were a technology megatrend when they happened when would that be, like the early 80s, I suppose. The first ones they were enthusiasts, right? People got a soldering iron out and like assembled them together and did things that they wanted to do. And actually that's the same with enterprise software. Early in a megatrend, it tends to be the purview of the engineers and enthusiasts who actually quite like wiring the bits together. But as businesses adopt the technology, it becomes mission critical, and the productivity, the progress they get becomes more important, then there's need and room for a platform like ours to come in, which maybe shields the business from some of that, so-called technical enthusiast-like fun of wiring different things together, but means the business can go 2.7x, that's the exact ROI number that we deliver, 2.7x faster in terms of delivering outcomes to their business. By the time it gets to a leader or a CIO or a CEO, obviously that's the way they want to go.
So it's interesting because 2.7x is a pretty darn impressive number. Curious, you've raised a lot of money. I mean, it's a CEO's job to fundraise. I work with a venture firm on Sand Hill Road. I work with several of them, but this one, the way they focus on investments is how much money do you need to produce the miracles necessary for your success? Walk me through, if you applied that to Matillion, 2.7x productivity sounds like a miracle. Walk me through how you had to do fundraising, because you did obviously in stages. Were you fundraising with a goal in mind, or how did you walk through that? Because every CEO at some point has to at least consider. Some people bootstrap, but you have to consider fundraising. I've always liked the notion of what's the miracle you have to produce, and how much is that miracle going to cost? Like SpaceX, they have to do probably 5. They have to figure out how to breathe they have to get people there quickly, not 2 years on a rocket ship. They have to somehow do self-sustaining food and build a community, and they have to actually get people to go there and stay. Those are all miracles, relatively speaking. We don't have any of that. Walk me through that with the 2.7 perhaps as the avatar and the miracle.
Yeah, so I like that phrase, sort of funding the miracles, as it were. I suppose to some extent what VCs do is deliver the ultimate homogeneous product, right? So $1 from VC is the exact same as $1 from VCB. That sentence sounded more acronym-like than I intended it to, but you know what I mean. And so it's important that they describe and position what they do in a cool way. But that one does kind of capture it nicely, right? By the way, I'm not talking about the value add beyond capital there, which definitely varies between VCs. Not only do you get the money, but you also get platform support and advice of the partner who joins your board and all that good stuff. So that is differentiated. But yeah, funding miracles. I mean, there's a couple of things that I'd say here. One is, in my particular journey, John, I was not an expert on this when I started it. Matillion's founding story, if you like, is we did get a couple of things right. We knew we wanted, when we founded the company all the way back in 2011, we knew we wanted to be at the intersection of cloud and data, to develop our own software, to have a recurring revenue business model aligned on the customer's outcomes. Those were some things that we knew right on day one and that we got right. But we didn't actually know we were going to end up building a platform called the Data Productivity Cloud. What we actually did is we started off building finished solutions for customers, more like a kind of SaaS rapid solutions company, if you like. Yep. And what we found is that we couldn't be as productive as we'd like in doing that. We were suffering from not getting the 2.7x, and we wanted to go faster. We actually tried to buy some software to help us go faster, but we found there was nothing suitable. So being that myself and another of the co-founders of Matillion, Ed Thompson, had a software engineering background, we decided to build a product initially for our own use. When we built it, it worked really well. And so thankfully it occurred to us maybe some other people in the world would like to do their data engineering more productively as well. We kind of pivoted the company to become a software company, an ISV, and we launched the product. And at that point, some people started to buy it, and the kind of the pivot, the thesis was begun to be proved out. So it was really at that point we started to think about institutional fundraising. And there's a couple of things that I've thought about as we've gone through that journey. And the first one is we're trying to solve a very large problem, and that's going to take capital. And particularly in Matillion's case, we work with SMB scale companies, but we also work very materially with mid-market and very large enterprise customers, Novartis, Salesforce, Amazon, London Stock Exchange. I could go on with a list like that of huge brand name Global 2000 companies for like half an hour that use our software. And the playbook kind of says, if you're trying to take a large market, particularly if you're trying to do it on the enterprise side, that's going to take capital. So that's one of the things that I've thought about. Also, we are a consumption economics company. So when we land a customer, they don't actually spend that much money with us on the first day. The kind of consumption curve goes up and to the right over time. The lifetime value of a customer is really good. They only give us that lifetime value if they like the software, if it is making us more productive and we do a good job supporting them. And so that's what I love about consumption business models. It aligns all our activities to our customers' outcomes. But from a cash flow point of view, it means you spend the money winning the customer and building the software well before you get the cash back. And again, that creates a capital requirement.
So it's like unless you have a really good first date, you don't get to the second date and you don't progress on. All the value is moving forward, not just because you had a decent first date. You have to be a good first date, good second, and go from there.
And I love that physics, by the way. We've seen generational companies built using the same physics. AWS, perhaps an exemplar example of this. You pay as you drink. And if you know you're going to drink a lot, you can buy some in advance and get a better unit price. But basically, you only pay, and we only recognize revenue when the customer actually does something in the platform, and just keeps everyone in alignment, right? In my company, boardroom to boiler room, we just care about, finding customers and getting them on the bus and then delighting them. But it does create a capital requirement. And then the last thing I sometimes think about is, there's various things said about, when to fundraise and how much to raise at each round. My view, we're Series E, so we've done this 5 times now, I suppose. But, I've got lots of friends that have done it 5, 6, 7 times as well. Generally, I think the right time to raise capital is kind of when you can rather than when you need to, and probably raise a little bit more than you need. Because, if your thesis is I'm trying to solve a very big problem and that's going to take a lot of capital, then you are going to use it, and therefore raising it when you can, to me, makes sense. I think there's risk with that as well. If you're raising it when you can, maybe you get a very high valuation. Very high valuations can be dangerous because if the market climate changes, you're then stuck with having to live into that valuation. As
we've seen in the last couple of years. Yeah.
As we've seen a lot in the last couple of years. And another thing is, if you've got a lot of cash in the bank, it can, you have to be so disciplined. I'm not sure I've always got this right, but you have to be so disciplined about trying to spend that money like you don't have lots in the bank and make sure every dollar is spent well. Those are some of the things I've thought about when I've been raising capital, John, if that makes sense.
No, it's great. It's great. Lots of things I'd love to dig into. You founded this company in 2011, which right out of high school or something. You went from like 8th grade or something like that, right into Matillion. It seems like a long time ago, but yeah, that's fine.
You're very charming to intimate that I was only 18, 11 years ago. Alas.
Yes, exactly. Like I said, we like to make you look good on camera. So, or people will say, what happened? Yeah. It's one of the two. We'll let the audience decide that. Yeah. So
I actually did found a company straight out of high school, by the way. I co-founded my first company when I was 17. I was still in high school. Because of that, I never ended up going to university for the Brits, college for the US audience, because I was building a business, and it was a small business. We built it to maybe 30, 40 people, but we sold it to a big American company, and that was kind of my college degree, if you like, John. So I did found a company out of high school, but not the...
And probably way more relevant than what you do at university. Yeah. So.
I don't know. I can't comment.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I'm curious. I'm always fascinated with a couple of subjects. One is how much people talk about. Oh well, yeah, they got lucky or they had luck on their side. How much do you either count on luck or acknowledge it as part of your journey? Because what 14 years or 13 years in business, obviously there's all kinds of things that happen in the economy or random things that you can't control. How has luck treated you, or what's your relationship with luck or outlook with luck?
Yeah, I think there's sort of two audiences that maybe comment on luck and its applicability to business building. And delicately, I'll say I think often both audiences get it wrong a little bit, actually. So the external audience, your friend that you bump into that you used to go to university with or whatever, they say, "Oh, he got lucky.
He got lucky. He was in the right place at the right time." Yeah.
And I think what that maybe passes over is the utterly absorbing, brutal, lonely, just continuous assault of work and effort and resilience required to build anything consequential: a sports franchise, a charity, an academic endeavor, a discovery, or certainly a company. Yep. So, people looking from the outside in, the overnight success that is XYZ, that overnight success that just took 13 years worth of 80-hour weeks, right? And, you talk to any CEO, their resting level of cortisol and adrenaline is like 98 times higher than the average member of society. Just permanently pumped up thinking about this stuff. On the flip side, though, the other audience that comments on this is us entrepreneurs ourselves, right? And in general, my observation is not enough of us acknowledge that luck plays a material part. We attribute the success of our companies to our personal brilliance. And I'm not sure that's right either, because you can put in all the same ingredients, the same effort, playbook, intellectual horsepower, and not build a consequential company. Right. And you can have people working in consequential companies whose resumes looks tremendous, but actually they were just strapped to the side of a rocket ship. The most important thing at the heart of any high growth organization, in my opinion, is product market fit. You have to be solving a problem that customers are willing to pay for, and that there's a big enough market of those customers willing to pay that you can build a consequential company. And not only do you have to have that product market fit, but they have to be willing to choose you because you're either first, better, or cheaper. And you can think about that a bunch and put in all the effort and intellectual horsepower and capital and just not have that resonant product market fit, or the market can shift against you. And it cannot turn into something tremendous. So I do think it's important for founders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, executive teams to also realize that there's luck involved, even though we definitely put the effort in. Because I think that keeps us humble, and I think it keeps us searching for continuously improving product market fit. And product market fit, of course, is not digital. It's not like 0, you've not got it, 1, you have. It's analog and scalar, and it varies over time. You can have it today, not have it tomorrow. It varies by market segmentation. You can have it these people and not for these people. So just like some humility there, admitting that there is some luck involved in backing the right horse, that I think just keeps us focused on the right things. Does that make sense?
It does. It's I love it. It's I find that the other piece with luck is, if you get a good break, do you have the guts to go all in? If something an opportunity falls in your lap serendipitously, do you take full advantage of it, or do you say, well, let's see how this plays out? If you wait, somebody else is going to steal it. And yeah.
And John, I mean, on that point, I'll be real quick here, but one of the things that I really enjoy doing, I'm lucky to be asked to do from time to time, is, someone maybe in Manchester or Denver where we're based or somewhere else, to say, hey, Matthew, could you come and talk to some people that are either at a very early stage in their company or, the sort of people that might set up companies. And that sort of point that you've just raised there often comes up. And the piece of advice I tend to like to give is, look, the most important things ultimately around entrepreneurialism and around business building is, first of all, you have to start. And then once you've started, you have to not stop.
Right.
And the starting thing, there's the curse of the kind of school fees and mortgage, right? We have baggage. And I think this is one of the reasons why we see so many entrepreneurs that have changed their world who are in their early 20s, right? They've not yet amassed like that baggage of life that makes them worry about their monthly paycheck.
Right.
And so just starting is so important, because if you don't start, you're definitely not going to do anything. And then once you've started, it's not stopping. I think one of the key traits in any entrepreneur, CEO, senior executive is resilience. And it's one of the reasons that when I'm looking for senior talent in my business, I always think about sports, drive, and academia. If someone has played high-level sport, or they've had early material strife in their life, or they've pursued academia to a reasonably advanced level, then that means they've had to be resilient, right? If you're doing sport, you have to get up and train in the rain and the cold. You're going to get beaten from time to time. You've got to recover from that. Like, same with life strife. If you've had to overcome something, you're going to be able to overcome other things in business and academia as well. You're sat in that lab pressing that button on the experiment for a year, and then you write up your doctoral thesis, and then you hand it in, and the answer is, I was wrong. It takes a lot of resilience to come through that, and that's why I like looking for those things. So yes, start and then don't stop. Maybe my most fundamental pieces of business building advice.
No, that's interesting. It leads me to I think a natural question. You hire more for talent or demonstrated experience that shows up in talent, or are you more interested in characteristics, resilience, or these days the word is grit. I don't like the word, but resilience or perseverance. The simple debate is talent versus culture, maybe more than that. But which do you look at primarily?
I think it varies role to role, stage to stage. For me, the most important overall concept to think about in team building is right person, right seat, right time. Again, that's not a one-way digital switch. Someone can be the right person in the right seat at the right time at this part of our journey, but by the time we move to this part of our journey, they're no longer the right person in the right seat at the right time. They've not changed as a human, just the needs of the business have changed over time. The analogy I always like to think about there, I'm from the UK, so we like soccer. If you're in the National League, which is one of the lower leagues that soccer teams plays in, and then you get promoted and promoted and promoted, one day you'll end up in the Premiership. The 11 players on the pitch when you're in the Premiership are not going to be the same 11 players that you had on the pitch when you were a National League side, right? You need the right person, the right seat, and the right time, and that's true for companies as well. But if you go into expertise and experience versus culture and core humanities, the way I would think about that is the kind of cultural fit and core characteristics are non-optional. You have to have those. So anybody that's not got those, you're not going to hire, or if you miss the fact that they've not got them when you hired, you're not going to continue working with. The expertise side, that's more of a judgment call and also role specific or stage specific. So you might take someone, I tend to really like this type of role, someone that's not done the top job, but's done the job one step below it and wants to step up. I really like those people because they tend to have a bit of a desire to win and prove themselves.
They're hungry. Yeah.
Like a positive version of a chip on your shoulder, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
The other thing about guys that have done the job, and this is not exclusively the case, but if they've done their job and crushed it, they're probably so rich they don't really want to work for you, right? Or if they do, they're not going to run at it with the same level of rigor and energy that they did when they crushed it. And if they've done the job and they've not crushed it, why? right? Now, there might be some really good reasons why, and in which case maybe that's the right person for you. But sometimes they might not have crushed it because they didn't crush it, right?
Right.
But, I also think expertise can be really valuable. You're not going to hire a CFO that's, never seen a spreadsheet before, right? And for me, this one, we often portray it that there's a camp, right? You hire the person with the stage commensurate expertise, or you develop your own talent. I think life is generally lived in the shades of grey, and that it's probably that those things are sliders, and also the need changes depending on the stage of the company and the particular role as well. So apologies for the slightly vague answer, but that's how I think.
No, I like it. So there's a theory. Obviously, I work with CEOs every day. One of the theories we hold is that the company can never scale faster than the pace of the CEOs scaling their own capability or their own competence. Fair or not?
I think there's a material degree of truth on that. If you look at those core competencies that you want from a CEO, I should acknowledge here that I don't think there's only one way to skin the cat. So, for instance, something I value and try to live is vulnerability and introspection. I think that keeps me honest. I think it gives me a desire to learn at an accelerated rate. Something that friends and colleagues of mine have heard me say hundreds of times is I like to believe that at heart I'm fundamentally stupid and fundamentally lazy, because if I remind myself of those things, then it makes me work really hard and try and learn at an accelerated rate. I don't think you'd catch like Elon Musk or Larry Ellison saying that, right? Like those guys are sort of big alpha CEO personalities. And who am I to say that that's not right? Because those guys have both done pretty nicely for themselves. One builds spaceships and cars, and the other one, it's got a pretty nice yacht collection, right? So I'm not sure that there's a right or wrong way of doing it. What I will say in my experience is that learning at an accelerated rate, if the business is growing like that, then trying to learn like that, drawing a graph with my arms there, John, I believe that's important. And therefore, I believe it's important to apply effort to it in the same way that an athlete would apply effort to training. If I look at the data points on that graph, I'm disgusted with the person that I was 2 years ago, and that person would be disgusted with the person that preceded them 2 years before that. And I knew nothing about nothing on day one of Matillion, and I hope I will be disgusted with myself today in 2 years' time. So I think that's healthy.
That's interesting.
The only just sort of maybe counterpoint I'd make is that someone once told me, a brilliant sort of coach friend and actually independent board member of mine called Brian Gentile, he drummed into me early, the CEO's job is to A, build a world-class team, B, give them the environment to succeed. So that's like culture, strategy,
funding,
resources. Yeah. And once you've done those two things, world-class team, environment to succeed, including resources and strategy, then and only then do the things that you're good at. And once the company's got some scale, most of the time is building a world-class team and giving the environment to succeed. You don't get that much time for the then and only then do the things that you like doing or are good at. So I do think the scalability of the business is also correlated to how good a job you do at putting the players on the pitch and at giving them the environment to succeed. Just like the Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl because they've got the best players on the pitch, they're the best trained, they're working to the best strategy, not because their coach can, run the 100-yard dash in like 7.2 seconds. Now, I took a big risk there because I know nothing about American football, but I'm hoping some of that was about right.
It's pretty good, except for the pitch. They don't play on a pitch, but that's okay. That's soccer. That's okay.
The field.
On the field. There you go. That's right.
A field. I'm sorry. Gave it away.
That's okay. It's okay. You can still root for the Chiefs. Yeah, that's okay.
I'm a Broncos fan.
Oh, that's right. You have to be. You're in Denver. You're a Broncos fan. Well, my condolences. They're gonna have a rough go for about three or four more years. That's okay. It happens. So, curious if you look at these days people look at what I'll call celebrity CEOs: Bezos, Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, and then a lot of people I find try to copy that. They try to be bold like Elon, or they try to be. It's fine to do that at some level and draw the best out of it. I've noticed though that the CEOs that do the best quietly understand their own, call it superpower, we call it genius talent, and run their leadership style through what they do naturally. They actually identify with what they do naturally and double down on it. Do you have a sense, first of all, curious about the theory, and then if you buy into the theory, do you have a sense of your own superpower or your own, what we would call genius talent, that makes you as good in your role as you can be and not copying other people?
So in terms of the thesis, I think there's value in learning and examining, studying, synthesizing the things that have worked well for other companies. If we all started from scratch every time, we'd spend our whole life trying to figure out how to start a fire, right? So standing on the shoulders of giants and learning from, synthesizing what's worked well before makes sense. The opposite word there, kind of subtly buried, was synthesizing. What I try to do, and I'm sure many others do as well, is, maybe you're thinking about, how do I arrange my go-to-market function? How do I pay my reps, balance my investments between demand gen marketing, product marketing, outbound and inside sales? How do I balance all that out? What's the comp plan look like? What should the targets look like? It makes a whole load of sense to go and look at what some other companies have done. But ideally, you don't just want to look at one, you want to look at several, and then you want to apply that to your own situation rather than copying rotely. And that's what I mean by synthesize. So in general, I think it's a good idea to be a student of what works. In Formula One, which is actually a sport I do know something about, the only one, because I'm a Formula One fan, one of the things that those guys try to do is, if they categorically don't know that they can do something better than another team, then they will do their best just to copy the other team on that particular aspect of the car or elsewhere in their operations. Because if they copy 90% from other teams and then innovate positively on the other 10%, their car will go faster. I think we can apply that. But to the CEO themselves and the sort of cult of celebrity, my view would be, you can't copy someone else, because it'll be too tiring, you won't be good at it, and it's inauthentic. And I think authenticity is so vital in probably life, and but certainly in leadership, and certainly in a CEO. Look, one of the key things that someone at the head of any organization does is they work with a team of people in their business to inspire them to run at a goal, right? To inspire them to change the world. Well, if you're inauthentic, if everyone knows you're, if you don't mind the verbal shorthand, John, bullshitting that and pretending to be someone else, then they ain't going to believe you and they ain't going to buy in. So I think you have to be yourself. I think there's a selection bias with those kind of celebrity CEOs, because we notice them because their personality types are noticeable.
Yes.
There are other companies, as you pick some real whoppers there, right? But you pick real whoppers with like celebrity style CEOs. But there's other really big companies with CEOs that just aren't quite as media ready as those guys.
Right.
And we think, look, Tim Cook at Apple, right? He's just like a more chilled out, cerebral.
I had dinner at the same restaurant. He sat across from us in Palo Alto. He can walk around in Palo Alto and have dinner with his husband, and nobody cares. Normal guy, right? Normal guy, and he doesn't. He's not filming it. He's not putting it on social media, and he wants to go and have dinner quietly in a restaurant. Yeah. We recognized who he was. We didn't even say hello because people give him his privacy. He's out in his private life. Elon can't leave the house, and if he does, he wants the cameras on him.
Well, I mean, and I'm not criticizing, by the way. I'm just saying that I do think it's important to be true to yourself. And this has
Yeah.
been tested many times. I mean, to give you a case study, I mean, we're a British company. I'm British. I'm from Manchester, UK. My communication style, I think, it's quite wordy, as you're probably noticing. I also try to be really polite. And we have some values in our business that are really important to us as well. Things like do business with integrity, confidence without arrogance. Sometimes we've been competing against companies and they have different values, different playbook, different corporate culture. Maybe one of the things that they do is like rubbish us on the internet, right? They put out a blog post that says, here's the 7 reasons why we're brilliant and Matillion's rubbish. And I have asked myself, maybe I should stop being who I am and be a little bit
Maybe
more
I should punch back. Yeah.
Yeah. And every time I've thought about this, I've concluded myself or I've been advised and reassured by other people. It's like, dude, you've just got to be true to the person that you are.
Play your game. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting. I think of this in terms of, if you and I are both, you graduated from Caltech and I graduated from Purdue with an aeronautical engineering degree. The game you would play working for SpaceX, if you were able to get in there, versus the game you would play playing for NASA, are completely different. One is government and works at a different pace and cadence, and the other one is reinventing a paradigm. You think, Elon has set it up that if you're nervous about, well, what if I can't figure out how to teach people or figure out how to breathe on Mars? You'll go to NASA and you'll be a safety engineer and you'll just play it. It's just a very different game, and that's one of the things he does well. Is everything that he creates, people say, do you want to invent something that's never been invented before?
There is one particular thing that I'd pull out of that I do think is important, which is when you're creating a company, what you hope will be a consequential company, something that's solving a big problem that a large company can be created from. And the phrase we like to use is trying to make a dent in the universe bigger than ourselves. I mean, one key thing about that is it's not easy.
Not easy.
And that requires, it's something we spoke about earlier in our chat, sir, but it requires resilience. And you said you don't like that phrase, grit, and I'm not sure I especially like that.
I love resilience. I don't like the.
It's just a bit lazy grit, isn't it? We do an annual internal conference for Matillion. So all Matillioners fly into Manchester. It's usually in. And we do a kickoff. Many companies do a sales kickoff. We do a whole company kickoff. We call it Super All Hands. So we have an all hands every quarter and then a Super All Hands at the beginning of the year. It's really good fun. We have like some cool speaker. Bear Grylls was our speaker this year. And, we have one of those solution expos with lots of little booths, but the booths are departments of Matillion showing off their wares to other colleagues. It's great. And I do a keynote, of course, at the beginning. What I spoke about this year was this idea of ascending a summit. And actually the theme of Super All Hands this year was ascent. And I was like, look, the technology industry has been pretty hard for the last 18 months, 2 years. But, that's because we feel that because we're trying to do something difficult, do something that not everyone chooses to do. It's like we're climbing a mountain and not everyone wants to be a mountaineer. Like, nope. It's tiring and it's scary and sometimes it's cold. And when you are climbing to the top of the mountain, sometimes there will be days where the sun's shining and the snow's firm and it's really good. And other days there'll be a blizzard driving in your face, and every second step you'll be worried about driving down a crevasse, and you're starving hungry and you're freezing cold, but you keep marching forward. And then one day you stand on the top of that summit and you do something that not many other people in the world have done, and you get the satisfaction for doing that. And so that was the sort of topic of my keynote. And the key thing is, not everyone wants to be a mountaineer, right? Nope. You do need to be the sort of person that wants to do something that's going to be tiring and cold sometimes and scary sometimes, but they're going to keep
oxygen deficient.
Oxygen deficient. Yeah, exactly. But they're going to keep putting one foot in front of the other until they get to the top. And I think that's true. Actually, almost all layers of a high growth company, you have to be comfortable with doing something scary, tiring, and occasionally hard. Right. And if that sort of thing's for you, then maybe an Elon Musk company or a company.
No, it's perfect. It's interesting that when you create a compelling mission or a commercial mission, it's an invitation to play, or it's an invitation to run away as fast as you want, and that it should be that polarizing. That people say, "Are you kidding me? That sounds amazing, difficult, challenging, like a 1,000,000-piece Lego as a kid, and you don't have the directions." You say, "I'm in." All you can see is the picture of the Death Star with 1,000,000 pieces, and you got to figure it out. Some kids dive right into that, and some kids opt out. They just give, they putz around a little bit and then say it's too hard. You think it should be that way.
And that's not a criticism.
No, it's not a criticism. No.
I just think changing the world is privilege. It's satisfying. It's great fun. But it's hard. Yeah. And it's hard and tiring and sometimes scary and cold.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. I'm cognizant of time. We like to have a little fun question. If we followed you around in grade 7 or grade 8 or around that time, with a National Geographic film crew, and then they do one of those documentaries like Animals in the Wild, we showed it to everybody and said, would you bet on this kid 20 years from now that he'd be a successful entrepreneur? From who you were in 7th or grade 7 or grade 8, how many people would have bet on you, including yourself? Would you have bet on yourself based on who you were? Was it obvious in 7th or 8th grade that this guy's going to be something, or were you a late bloomer, or what was the scouting report?
Could I ask an orientation question?
Absolutely.
Country to you, John. How old is grade 7 or grade 8?
12, 13, 14, the clumsy years when you have braces and a bad haircut and your ears are too big and all that. And you can't.
Got it.
Yeah.
So, maybe that young, I'm not sure it had been super evident. The reason I was asking about the age is when I was about, maybe 15 or 16, my form master at the time, a guy called Keith Knowles, lovely bloke, I assume it's the same in US schools. Like once a year you have a school photo, right? And they'll do a big one of the whole school, and then they'll sometimes do a little personal portrait of you. And then a few weeks later, it's probably all electronic now, but back when I was school, there'd be a pile of these photos, and you could take one home, and then your parents could send in the money to buy it if they wanted it. My form master got my photograph from the school photo, stuck it up on the notice board, and wrote "the chairman" underneath it. And so,
I think we've got the Vegas bet. Yeah, he's betting big on you.
I was going to do all right. I think the things that you probably would have picked up was, I think even back then I was a reasonably good communicator. And I think that is one, I don't think there's one superpower that can make people a brilliant whatever, but I think one superpower that certainly I find powerful and useful is communication, because you use communication to inspire and lead your team. You use communication to explain to customers in the market the value add and your raison d'etre in the world. And I think I was probably a reasonable communicator back then. One thing that's maybe surprising, just because you said it was a fun question, is I wasn't actually that into computers, John, when I was that age.
Well, you weren't a nerd, or you weren't a computer nerd.
I wasn't a computer nerd. I mean, some of my friends may question me if I wasn't a nerd or not. I definitely had the braces and hair that you described, but I still have the hair that you described. I didn't have a computer, and the school that I went to, it wasn't.
Well, they didn't have a lab or anything like that where you could go in.
It's like the beginnings of one, I think.
Yeah, the beginning. Yeah.
Looking back on it, and this is a bit vulnerable, and it's certainly not meant to be sort of maudling or anything, but I said earlier about the things I look for when I'm hiring. One of the tools that I find very useful is sports, drive, and academia. And about that age, there was nothing absolutely terrible, but there was like interesting stuff going on in family and at home. I had to take quite a lot of responsibility at quite an early age. So sometimes I paraphrase this by saying I was first a parent at 12. And I don't mean I was having children, just for clarity,
right.
But certainly I had to take a lot of responsibility early in life. Now, so maybe some business psychologist could have put together to say, actually, that's a really great grounding for for leadership later in life, because you get used to taking responsibility for your own actions, making decisions,
mentoring, growing, all those things. Yeah.
Comfortable with risk, comfortable with discomfort. So maybe some of those things, but do I pass the test, John? Was that
perfect? No, it's perfect. I mean, some people know this about me. I punched my grade 7 teacher in the face because and which is a good way to get thrown out of school. But he called a kid a racial slur, and we were a suburban school, and this was the first kid of color. He's from the Dominican Republic. He called him burnt toast, and I raised up and protested, and all the kids protested. But he recognized me as the ringleader, sent me out in the hall, and then came out and challenged me to a fight. Well, my last name it's on the podcast. I'd been in a fight a lot. I was an 11-year-old kid that knew how to break somebody's nose because I had to defend myself all the time. When he told me, give me right here. You think you're so good? Give me your best shot. And so I popped him, and he got fired, and I got suspended. And but people say either you're going to go to jail or you were going to lead a company, but there was nothing in between. And it's funny.
I never hit a teacher, but I did once have an economics master tell me that he thought I'd go to jail. So
well, that's. I think that's something to rest your hat on. That's a good thing. So it means you've got. I say that about 2 of my kids. They'll either run the largest drug cartel, or they're going to run the largest publicly traded company, and it's the verdict's still out, I think. But the skill set is the same. So it's not a talent. It's not a talent thing. It's just a product differentiation thing. Which product?
We're not advocating a cartel career here, though, John. I feel like.
Well, if we're going for cash, I mean, I'll retire comfortably. So that's yeah. So I'm not ruling it out totally. Yeah. Well, Matthew, thank you for taking the time to invest in our audience today. Really appreciate you being here on Genius at Scale. Anything you'd like to say to the audience in closing?
I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, John. You're really good at this. It's a really good fun interview. To the audience, if you made it this far in the podcast, thanks for listening to a Mancunian masquerading as a software CEO. And if you need your AI or data productivity to be wildly more productive, we stand ready to help, and you can find us at Matillion.com. John, thanks so much.
That's great. We'll have all of your links and relative information. We'll put that in the show notes. As always, we thank our audience for joining us on Genius at Scale, and we look forward to seeing you down the road. All the best.
Thanks, John. Cheers now.
Thanks for joining me on another powerful episode of Genius at Scale. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to continue your journey into the world of scaling, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review and let the world know how the insights of these amazing CEOs helped you. Also, if you're hungry to discover more counterintuitive strategies to scale your business, don't forget to grab a copy of my book, The Little Book of Big Scale, where I've compiled wisdom and insights from CEOs who have successfully scaled their companies against all odds. Or you can go to our website, www.evokinggenius.com/book. Thanks again for tuning in. Go forth and scale.